Okay, so we are live, and we've got another DC Multiverse unboxing from Mcfarlane Toys. Yeah, and that is Superman from Hush. Yeah, there we go. So there's the picture on the back, which when I first opened up the package, when it arrived from Amazon, I saw this black and white image on there, and I was kind of horrified because I figured, oh no, maybe they sent me accidentally some kind of variant when it's black and white. No, I want the tried and true, the red and blue, the Superman in the classic costume. Uh, there's a look at him in the box. Now, the problem with this figure, though, as far as I'm concerned, is that I'm actually not a huge fan of the Jim Lee version of Superman. So I don't know if that's going to wind up being the head that I'm going to leave on there. Like, it's one of those weird sort of things where, like, I think they did a good job with the head insofar as they made it look like a Jim Lee Superman, but I'm actually not too big a fan of the way Jim Lee draws Superman. So it's kind of a lose lose for me. Let me go ahead and open this up. We've talked about the packaging on these McFarlane figures several times before, so I'm not going to delve too deeply into it. I don't think the design is particularly interesting, so I just don't pay that much attention to it. I will say that it's got like an 85th anniversary Superman logo on there, so that's kind of neat. Come on, hung up on there. So it probably got stuck because the flight stand, but I figured the flight stand would just pull the whole thing out, but it didn't. So it does have a flight stand. That makes me happy. I always like having a flight stand with flying characters. And I'm very much of the opinion that every action figure these days should come with a figure stand. No exceptions. There's no excuse not to have a figure stand with your figures anymore. And one thing that I do like is that most of the time, not all of the time, not as often as they should, I feel like it ought to be every time, honestly. Most of the time when McFarlane does a flying character, they do give them a flying stand. So that is good. Oh, yeah, speaking of heads, I'd already printed out with my 3D printer. I'm got an Alex Ross Superman head. So that's one of the ones that I'm making. I'm going to make a few different heads for this figure so that I can have some display options. I figure it probably shouldn't be too hard to make fake heads that are swappable. So there's a trading card, same piece of artwork that's on the back of the package. I don't know why they went with this black and white picture instead of one that was actually colored in. It looks like it's Jim Lee's pencils, and you can see that it is from the Hush storyline. If you look closely, you can see little bits of poison ivy wrapped around his neck and sticking out of parts of his costume. So, real name is a Superman Hush data file. Real name Kal-El Clark Kent, adoptive name. Sent to Earth from the dying planet Krypton as a baby, Kal-El was found by farmers Martha and Jonathan Kent and raised as their son Clark. As Clark grew up, they've got a little TM next to the word Clark. So they trademarked the name, not just Clark Kent, but just Clark. So you're not allowed to name your kids Clark anymore because DC owns that name. You will have to pay royalties to WB if you name your child Clark. As Clark grew up, the radiation from Earth's yellow sun gave him extraordinary powers, which he kept hidden. Now fully grown, he uses his powers to protect his adopted world as Superman. So yeah, Superman, probably one of the most important characters created in the 20th century. The first superhero. And there are other characters that you could consider a superhero that came before Superman, Popeye, Tarzan, the Phantom, Flash Gordon. But Superman is the first superhero because he's the character that made the term superhero necessary. They had to invent the word superhero to describe what kind of character Superman is. So he comes with two open hands. And I don't really like the color of this plastic it looks less like Caucasian flesh and more like kind of a beige kind of color. It's just kind of pale and washed out. And unfortunately, when I do my figure heads, I'm gonna have to paint them that color because I want it to match the rest of the figure. So there's also I'll try to show you when I take it out of the package. But there's a small flaw I notice in one of the fists that's on the figure right now. So we're buried all deep like in here. There we go. But for the most part, I like the colors on this figure. The red and blue are nice and bright and sharp. They're proper comic booky colors. You know, like that Libre Hamo. Sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, sir. That Superman figure. It's a really nice figure. I really liked it. And that was like the closest thing I had to a vanilla Superman before I got this one. And then I had the Frank Miller Dark Knight Returns Superman, but that's a very Frank Miller Superman. So it's not going to fit in with just any old superhero figures. He does have the S on the back of the cape. I'm going to try to get this cape out of here without getting too scratched up or anything. There we go. And that looks nice and sharp. Even though it is supposed to be a Jim Lee Superman, it is not the emblem, thankfully, as drawn by Jim Lee. It is a very just logo perfect kind of emblem, which is as I like for the emblems to be on Superman figures. And man, he is bulky. That is like a guy who's like he might be bigger than the Frank Miller Superman, come to think of it. He's a big dude. Look at that. Let's see. Since I have over here the Hush Batman, we can look at them next to each other. Since these are supposed to be characters that are from the same comic book, designed by the same artist, you know, these should be characters that look like they fit together pretty well. And for the most part, I think they do. So Superman, like I said, he is a bit more muscular than Batman. You know, very barrel-chested. This is kind of a Wayne Boring-esque Superman. I don't know if this is the same one that you used for the Rebirth Superman that I already have, but he seems bigger than that, you know? So, and they're about the same height. Batman's actually a hair taller, not counting the ears. And his fists are massive. But you can see, hopefully, what I'm talking about is on the camera. There's a little hole where the plastic, I guess, didn't quite fit into the mold, like a little bubble there or something. So there's a little nick on his finger. So, like I said, the head sculpt, it does look a lot like how Jim Lee draws Superman. So if you like Jim Lee's Superman, that's a good figure for you. But I've just never really been a fan of the way Jim Lee draws Superman, because he just, like, to me, he needs to have that sort of like more heroic sort of look to him. He just doesn't look quite as heroic as I'm used to Superman is looking. He just looks kind of bland, I guess. I don't know. I can't quite put my finger on it. I wish I could put into words. This is why I think he I don't think he quite gets the hair right. I think the curl should be a little bit more substantial. So Superman's hair should have a little bit more curl to it, I think, than Jim Lee draws it. So he does have kind of a Henry Cavill kind of hairline, though, where it's that little bit of a receding hairline. So let's have a look at the articulation. So Superman can look up about that far. I'd rather be able to look up a little bit more because, you know, the flight poses and everything. He can look down about that far. Head tilts from side to side pretty well. So there's that. He's got the butterfly shoulder articulation, so you can move the arms back and forth that way. That's pretty cool. You can rotate the arms all the way around. The cape does kind of hinder it a little bit on that side, since the cape flows in this direction. So there is a bicep swivel right there. So you can swivel the bicep. He has double jointed elbows, which this one, the elbow seems to be stuck a little bit at the top there, but the bottom part moves just fine. And yep, there we go. I got it to bend up here. Excellent range of articulation at the elbows. He's got the cool Mcfarlane wrist joints. I do suspect, like I said, and I don't really have it to compare right now. I'll see if I can dig it out later and find some comparison, do some comparison pics. But I think this is the same body mold that was used for the Rebirth Superman that I already have, which I believe is the same as the Action Comics 1000 Superman that unfortunately I was too late to the party to get. So there we go with that. If I'd had that one, I probably wouldn't have bothered to buy this one if it is the same body. But that one I think had a better head sculpt, or at least one I liked better. So this one I like the coloring of the suit better though, so I might have bought it anyway. So his leg moves up about that far. A little bit hindered by the rubber trunks, but not too much. I'd be more this one's actually a little worse. It doesn't quite move up as far as the other leg. I'd be worried about leaving it in too extreme of a position though, because you don't want to bend those out of shape. He does double jointed knees, bend back about that far. Even though this is a separate piece of plastic, and I'm sure they could have figured out how to put a boot cut in there. There's no boot cut. And he's got the cool Mcfarlane ball joints at the ankles, just like with the wrists. So got a good range of motion there. And he's got this toe articulation because they just want to show off. So, and as I like to do anytime I get a Superman action figure, let's see if we can get him into the classic Kurt Swan Superman flight pose. Actually, I think I'm going to do it with the other arm since I know this leg's going to kick up a little bit more. I'm going to put the other arm forward. So get the knee to bend back all the way. And then if you could look up a little bit more. But yeah, there we go. Classic Kurt Swan Superman flight pose. Excellent. Excellently done. That works really well. So let's see if we can get him into an arms akimbo kind of style with all that good Mcfarlane articulation. It shouldn't be too hard to accomplish. So there we go. Classic. That's a classic Superman. So other than the head, which is, like I said, still that weird Jim Lee head that I just can't. It's just not for me. I'm sorry. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings who's a fan of the Jim Lee Superman, but it just doesn't work for me, like that head sculpt. So but like I said, it's a well done head sculpt in that it looks like the Jim Lee version of Superman, which is what it's supposed to look like. So it gets the job done. So I can't really complain too much about it looking like exactly like what it's supposed to look like. And I knew that it was going to look like that when I bought it. So I'm not really complaining about it so much as just saying, like, yeah, if I'm being realistic about it, it's not my ideal. So, but I can pop this head off and put on whatever head I want, because the Mcfarlane heads will just pop right off like that. So since I printed off that Alex Ross Superman head, let's go ahead and have a look and see what that's going to look like on there once I get that completed. And it looks fine on the camera, but looking at it in real life, I think like it's actually sits a little high on the neck. So I'm going to Dremel out a little bit of the inside before I finish it up. But it came out pretty well proportioned. I'm pretty happy with how that's going to look. So that's going to be the head that I'm going to have on there, is that Alex Ross Superman head. And I'm going to make a couple of other extra heads so I can have heads to swap around. And I'll make like a community post, or maybe even like a reel or something once I get it out, so you can have a look at it. So that's pretty much it for this guy. I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. I think anybody who's a fan of Jim Lee's version of Superman. Like, if that's your definitive Superman, I don't think you could get a better Superman figure than this. I think that works out just fine. And if you don't mind Jim Lee's Superman art, I think it would be good. He does look a little bit like Henry Cavill, so that's nice. So you know, there's that too, just kind of like a more cartoonish, comic booky sort of Henry Cavill sort of look. But I'm gonna swap it out for that Alex Ross head. That's gonna be the head that I think is gonna be the default head that I'm gonna leave on there once I get it all said and done. But like I said, I'm gonna have to Dremel out the inside a little bit, and so I can get it to sit on the neck just right. I do feel like this head sits on the neck kind of low, but I don't know if that's necessarily maybe because of how Jim Lee draws it. Maybe they were trying to make it look accurate to his artwork as much as they could. I'm not sure. So for now, I'm gonna put Superman on the flight stand because, like I said, I like having these flight stands, and I think he's probably gonna wind up getting posed on that. So I do have another Mcfarlane figure coming up soon, and because I'm gonna have a Supergirl figure that is the Target exclusive one. So we'll be seeing that shortly. And my next episode is going to be Agent Helix from G.I. Joe Classified. Now, she's one that I should have actually gotten last week, but I wound up not. And I'll tell that whole story whenever I do this figure, which I'm planning on doing tomorrow. So make sure you don't miss that. If you want to make sure that you don't miss that, make sure that you like and subscribe. All this fun YouTube stuff down below. Hit the little bell, turn it from red to gray, and then it will give you like these really annoying pop-up notifications anytime I go live. So if you don't want to miss out on any videos that I make, that's the best way to do that. Like I said, I'll have that Supergirl figure coming up sometime soon, probably sometime this week, and I'm going to do Helix tomorrow because she's long overdue anyway. That will be the third of the 4 figures that I got out of the 4th out of 5 figures that I got out of that batch. There was Ripper and Buzzer and Shockwave, and then she was supposed to come out around the same time. And for whatever reason, like General Hawk is lollygagging, so he's actually not supposed to show up until this Friday. But I don't know why that one's running so late. So anyway, that's pretty much it for this episode. We will talk to you next time. Bye.